Hello? Shubigi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so
Can
we
you
can
hear me?
keep the volume like that because it's a small
Yeah.
room. The only thing that I need for is for Shubigi to hear us. So this way
Okay, you're a
we
little
don't have.
soft suddenly. Now I can't hear you so well
Can
anymore.
you
You were much clearer
right about
earlier.
now?
Yeah, it's a little better. It's all right. I can raise my volume. Can you speak again, please?
Hello, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect.
My screen is on full share. I'm not sure why it's appearing the way it is on yours. I mean, I can only see a thumbnail, but
Can you change the slide and see so we see that your slide is changing?
no, it's not changing.
How
It's not
come?
changing at all. It's changing on my screen, but not on yours. I don't know why.
She cannot change the slides.
I just stopped share, so let's try again.
Okay, okay, let's try again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's try PowerPoint instead of PDF and see if this works. Okay, I'm doing a full screen, like a full
How come
screen
she cannot
share.
change
Is
it?
it there okay now?
Yes, yes, a little bit flu, but it's just a connection, I think. Yeah, it's
Is the
so flu.
slide changing?
It is changing, but it's very flu.
Okay. I can't see anything there to be honest, so I'm going to
We
just
see
take your
your
word for it that
slide,
it's working.
but
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit flu. You know, it's not sharp enough.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure why. I have a 5G connection and excellent internet connection actually. It's a fiber
But
optic
we
connection,
see your
so from
face really good.
yeah. Oh,
You know,
okay. That's a
it's
pity. I'd rather the content is better than my face.
no. I mean, we love your face. So,
Oh,
but you know, your
no.
face is really good. But it's only the slides. I don't know why.
Okay, let's try this one now. Oh, and
Okay.
full screen.
Like this we can do. Can you change the slide?
It's not changing. So it doesn't work with PDF. I notice it only works with PowerPoint. So it's fine because I have both. I'm always like it's
Sorry?
just this paranoia. I have both, so it's okay.
Yeah, I think PDF.
Hi.
Let's just try it on PDF.
No, the PDF is the one that's not working. The slides aren't changing for you.
Ah, it's good right
Is it
now. Can
changing
you
now?
see? Can you? Ah, it's changing. Yeah, it's perfect.
Okay. All right. Super.
Okay.
Is it sharp now? Okay. So shall I keep the PDF up or remove it right
Can you
now?
change again?
No, it's not working again.
So let's just have it the way it was. No full screen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's all right. You can do that. Let me
Can
know when
you?
you're ready to share it
Uh,
though. Yeah. I'll
hello.
escape the full
Can
screen.
you make
Yeah.
it not full screen?
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Can you share your slides again?
Mm-hmm. Give me a moment. Okay.
We want to see her as well. Can you change the slide? Ah, perfect. Okay, can you move it down so we see?
Yeah.
Ah, good.
Now it's just a wall of text, which is dreadfully unfortunate, but it doesn't matter.
Okay. Can you change
Well,
the
at least
slide
it
once?
works.
Yeah, it works. So the
Okay,
voice is
super.
good, the slide is good, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to apologize in advance for any technical glitches that may occur. Shubigi is joining us from Singapore right now, and we've tried and tested everything, so hopefully it'll go well, fingers crossed. I'd like to begin by thanking Asia Now for having us here. Joining us in this conversation today is Shubigi Rao, artist and curator of the 5th edition of the Kochi-Muziris Biennale, In Our Veins Flow Ink and Fire. That will open this year on the 12th of December and run until the 10th of April 2023. We have, along with Shubigi, Catherine David, art historian, curator, and former deputy director of the Center Pompidou. Ali Cherri, who's a participating artist in this edition and has been with us since 2019. And Dr. Shwetal Patel, who is our international programs and partnerships consultant. And my name is Mario D'Souza. I'm the director of programs and on the curatorial team for the 5th edition under Shubigi Rao, and we welcome you here today. We're going to start with a brief introduction that Shubigi will place for her edition, and that will kind of form the talking point for all of our responses. So over to you, Shubigi.
Hi, thank you. I hope you can hear me clearly. Please signal if you can't. I'm apologize for not being there in person, but I was unable to make it this year. I've actually I'd just like to give a really brief introduction to this edition of the Biennale. And I'm sure that Shwetal, who's been there since its inception, would be able to talk more about the Biennale and the foundation in general. Well, this edition is called In Our Veins Flow Ink and Fire, and the title actually comes from something I wrote some years ago, but it was at the cusp of what I felt was the rising neo-fascist agendas across the world. And so this was something I wrote in about, I think, 2015, as part of a drawing that I had done. And it was something that sat for a while. It was about how do you push back against despair and apathy? Because one of the things that the forces of illiberal and neo-fascist thinking do is that they make you feel like you are powerless and that you are ineffectual. And I think for a lot of us in the arts, we already struggle with that sense of being disenfranchised or being unable to understand the power of what it is we do, the point of what it is we do also sometimes. And with the massive climate crisis and the way we hurtling towards extinction, it's just this sense that we don't have the tools to sort of regain our place in this world, so to speak. So the idea of fire, the transgression that comes with anger, the sense of being able to break through the borders and boundaries that are imposed on our thinking and our ways of working, is something that was actually it is the cornerstone of this edition for me. So I started looking for artists that actually were, I think it was very important to me actually, that the artists that I work with are artists who are, how would I say, would best embody this ideal, right? And I'm sorry, but my screen, after all the tests, the screen isn't advancing. How lovely. Can you just give me a moment, please? Oh, okay. I'm not sure why this is happening. Can you just give me a moment? Okay. To me, a biennale is more than a place where artists are sort of willy-nilly put together, or it's a sense of collisions, or you create connections between artists who actually, or practices that may not have much in common with each other. To me, it's a bulwark against despair. And it may seem like this impossible, almost idealistic idea, but where are we without an idealistic notion? And I really wanted to start from this ideal that the Biennale is essentially a commons. I mean, we hear criticisms of biennales all the time because it's very fashionable to do that. And I want to just also mention one thing. We often hear about how the proliferation of biennales is a bad thing. I mean, in some ways, yes, perhaps environmentally at least. But I often hear this criticism from people from the Euro-American world. And what it really means is that why are there so many biennales in the global south? And I think one of the reasons we have it is actually cause for celebration. So for me, that's already a fertile ground within which to have very beautiful collisions and accidents to happen. So I feel that when you talk about this impossibility of push of the arts, and especially a biennale being a pushback against despair, just remember, all of us as humans, what do we do in the face of the most fraught and dire conditions? We come back to our poetry, our languages, our art, our music, and our optimism and humor. So optimism and humor, when dealing with the most fraught and dire ideas or traumas, is actually, to me, the most powerful thing. It's the possibility of storytelling as strategy, and also the transgressive fire of satire, and the power of ink, the power to tell, the power to speak, the power to make. And so this edition, therefore, is these very different practices under conditions that are joyful and grim. And of course, this was something I thought of pre-pandemic, and during the pandemic, of course, I thought, do I need to revisit my curatorial note? Do I need to rethink this? Turns out I really didn't, because it's as apt during and, dare I say it, post-pandemic. I mean, having said that, I don't know if we're actually post-pandemic. But yes, I feel that there is darkness, even that even in the darkest absurdity, there is optimism. And this Biennale, that has traditionally been a celebration of artistic practice, started by artists, always curated by artists. It is a celebration of artistic thought, practice, desire, yearning, and also, I think, incredible optimism. So for me, all we need for an ideal to exist is for us to behave as if it already does. And I think that was the impetus and the background to my conceptualization. And so we have 84 artists and collectives. Please excuse the tiny screen. You can just go to Eflux and read the whole thing. It's all up there. I mean, the tiny sort of font on the screen. This is actually the artist list so far. It's not all 84. The full list will drop in, like, closer to the Biennale. But I'm really delighted that we have one of our artists here, and also an artist who has been steadfastly part of this Biennale since 2019, when I first invited him. Ali's work is really remarkable, and I think it's best that he speaks about it himself. But I'm so delighted that the work that we're going to be showing is a work that he's been talking about with us since 2019. But I mean, this is a list. You can look it up on eFlux as well. I want to just briefly run through a few artists. You get a sense of what I'm talking about, and that it's not all guff when I say things like optimism in the face of the grim. Uramili is actually a duo, a filmmaker duo and theater duo from India. And what they've done is they made this incredible film, which means up, down, and sideways. And it's a film about song, and songs that are sung by a community in this village of about 5,000 people during harvest time. But it's a polyphonic form of singing that is incredibly beautiful, and it's a musical portrait, of course, of community. And everyone takes part in it, including, as they say, the bad singers. Nobody's left out of this. Everyone's voice is involved in this, and this sounds like an act of how would you say, I mean, at least to me, this is an act that is a reminder of something that has been with us since the inception of our species, which is the act of living with the land, tilling it, singing it, making this mythology through voice about the land. So singing and song is actually a very important part of the Biennale. And you'll see it through some of the works that I'm showing. I'm sure you all know Thao, and I'm delighted that she's also part of this Biennale. The work that she's showing is the work actually that I'd sort of asked her, I mean, I'd commissioned her to do. And then, of course, we postponed. So I'm so glad she got to show it at Venice. For those of you who've been to the Venice Biennale, you would have seen this piece there. I'm thrilled that we're showing it as well. Priya Gita is a young artist from from Singapore, who deals with the indentured movement of indentured labor from India to Singapore. And for me, as a former Indian, ex-Indian, and now Singaporean, I'm particularly, of course, involved with the movement of people and how the stories occur. But what she's done is she's told the story of plantation workers, and this is where the wealth of Singapore actually came from, at least, and also was the wealth that fed the British Empire. So in the stories of empire, colonialism, exploitation of labor, but also the disenfranchisement of an entire race of people, even in modern day Singapore. This is a brilliant work that actually uses an augmented sort of disruption of how people and land work together, which is again something so many of us talk about across the world, and is again something I'm foregrounding in this Biennale. What are these terrains? Are these terrains metaphors, methods? It's so fascinating how in South Asia and Southeast Asia, there's this dialogue that's been happening for a very long time that I'm really happy to now bring together in one place, because it's been sort of fragmented before this. So Priya Gita is one of the artists I'm really delighted to show. I also wanted to spotlight an artist from Myanmar, formerly part of a collective of female photographers, women photographers. Rita's work actually accompanied the very first announcement of In Our Veins Flowing in Fire. And I think her work is something that's really close as well to what I've been talking about. And her series of photographs actually is about this royal capital that was built by the military junta. And the purpose of it is this devoid, it's a soul licit. It's devoid of any life, of any sort of it's all restricted zones. And who is it built for? Bureaucrats, diplomats? No one knows. And the answers to these questions, as she says, happened with the military coup on the 1st of February last year. It's a work of tremendous pain, but also of anger, and and yet at the same time aesthetically almost cold. So it's really beautiful to see these collisions happen within a single work. And then we have Ximena, who's from Peru, whose work also I've admired for a very long time. This is a really beautiful work where there's a series. She's looked at pre-Columbian fabric and textile weaving, and that weft and warp of weaving that she does, she creates these installations that actually use electrical cables and solar power to generate coded information and knowledge and diagrammatic information. Again, very beautiful work that again speaks to a kind of teleological collapsing of the past into the contemporary, and how, as artists, we actually look at this as a form of speaking about our fears for the future. Really, absolutely beautiful work. Gabrielle Goliath is showing one of her most powerful works with us. It's part of her LG series as well. And this is a work that actually talks about femicide and violence against women, particularly in South Africa. It's a haunting work and one of the most powerful works I've been lucky enough to witness. So I'm really humbled that we're able to show this work. It's part of that whole crisis of femicide that's been faced actually globally in different degrees, but to quite an large extent in South Africa at the moment. And Zina, I don't know if you all know about Zina Sarawiwa, originally from Nigeria, and her father was one of the environmental activists who was basically assassinated by Shell. So it's all about the ugly story of big oil and the role that it has played always in the Nigerian Delta and what it has done to people. So our dependence on fossil fuels is actually something that is at the background of a lot of the work she does. And this is a really beautiful work, which is about the Karikpo masks. But in this, instead of using the beautiful hand-carved mask, she uses actually petroleum resin, which erases completely the hand of the artist. It erases the idea of this kind of tradition of action dance, of language through performance. All of that changes when you look at it in this light. So these are all the things that I think are at the forefront of a lot of our concerns about the fears of the future. They're all interlinked, but they're also almost celebratory in their defiance of giving into those fears, of giving into that despair. And finally, I'd like to show Mitra Kamalan's work. She's an artist from Kerala in India. As you all know, Kochi is in Kerala. And it's a really interesting series of works that she's doing for us. And because she uses things, very interesting different influences from Mughal miniature paintings, early Arab illustrations, folklore, but it's also how she puts it in and creates this new vernacular almost. And for her, this vernacular is robust and muscular, and it's incredibly powerful in also dismantling the muscularity of masculinity while talking about that love that exists between a kind of sort of between warring factions, that tension between hate, desire. It's really actually very beautiful, very powerful, and arresting work. I'll stop here now because I think there's a lot that I'd like to hear from the other panelists, but it's been a pleasure to actually just very briefly give you a kind of quick insight into some of the works that are going to be presented at this edition. And I really hope to see you all there. I mean, I can't see you all now, but I hope to see you in December.
Thank you, Shubigi. I think we'll start with Ali. We initially started a conversation with Ali in 2019, and of course, a lot has changed since then. And the work is now both a 3-channel installation a full-length feature film, and we're very excited to have him as part of Shubigi's edition. And yeah, Ali, if you could introduce the work a little bit, and we can move.
Yeah, thank you, Mario. Thank you, Shubigi. So yeah, I mean, we started when we started talking about the work to present in the Biennale. I mean, it was a different world even. So it's a project that I started working with on in 2017. And that I went, so it's for those of you who saw the work that is in Venice Biennale, it's shot in northern Sudan, on a brickyard in northern Sudan near a dam, a hydroelectric water dam on the Nile River. And I went, so I started preparing the project 2017. 2019, we went to shoot, and that's when it was the beginning of the uprising, the revolution in Sudan. And while we were shooting, there was a coup d'etat, and Omar al-Bashir, the dictator who was there for 30 years, was overthrown. And we had to evacuate and leave the country because we didn't know at the time what was going to happen. So when we were talking, I mean, the project had stopped because of the revolution. And I was hoping to be able to be back and finish it. So we started discussing the possibility of showing the work, but was all in a way like a theoretical discussion. So then COVID happened, 2020, and then so I went back in 2021 and shot and finished shooting the film, and then the work, I mean, was shown in Venice. So, I mean, the whole calendar of how things were supposed to be completely changed. But I just want to comment a few things. I mean, on I mean the themes of the Biennale and what was, I mean, the points of contact or of joint interest when we were having our discussion. So the film. There's like 3-channel video installation called "Of Men and Gods in Mud." It looks at mud as the materiality of the imaginaries, as the potential materiality of, you know, the emergence of something new. We know how throughout humanity we've always saw in this coming together of earth and water, the founding mythology of humanity, from Gilgamesh to Adam, that's created from mud, to the golems. I mean, we've always saw in this mixture the rise of, you know, these creatures that tell the story of humanity. So I was very interested in placing in working in 2 temporalities, a very current moment of these workers working today next to a dam that is considered one of the most destructive projects in the world for the ecology, for the nature, but also for local populations. And at the same time, a different temporality, which is thousands of years of production of these bricks. I mean, these workers still make the bricks in the same way they were done for a very long time, from the pharaonic times. And so the revolution happened to, you know, like to take place while we were working on this project. And all of a sudden, I mean, there was this added layer of looking at the materiality of the imagination, or the possibility of the imagination as a political strategy for change. I mean, as Mario mentioned, there's also a fiction feature film that I've made in parallel to this project called The Dam. It's currently, been shown in festivals. It will be released in cinemas in France on 1st of March. It was presented at Cannes des Réalisateurs in Cannes, and since we're presenting, touring with it. And in the film, I mean, we follow one of the brickmakers, and there's like a parallel between the story of the brickmaker and the story of the revolution. And I was interested in how these authoritarian regimes, one of the first things that these regimes do is they take hold or take hostage our imagination, where we're unable even to imagine a world where they don't exist. And I think there's like the first step for change, of to create resistance, or as a strategy for political change, is to take back the space of the imagination. Like, we have to be able to imagine a different world in order to start working to create this world. So there is this parallel. I mean, it speaks a lot also about ideas of resistance that goes through, through storytellings, through the imagination, but really as a concrete political strategy.
The Kochi-Muziris Biennale, in that sense, the Muziris in the title comes from Kochi's identity as a pre-Silk Route trading center, a center for globalization that eventually is drowned by the River Periyar, and it's very close to the island where the Biennale is actually hosted. Kochi in itself was a site that was colonized by all the four powers. But at the same time, it has been a kind of a melting pot for culture. So you have a variety of people, of traders. It was also one of the points from where slaves left for Africa. So I think like all these histories continue to enmesh and in a way like become a kind of a kind of a background to the practices and to the Biennale as we present it. The Biennale is also hosted in warehouses. These are spice go-downs. So you have the Koya go-down, and you have a laboratory, and you have other kinds of and you have something called the pepper house, which become primary sites for the biennial. So they are not our traditional sites. These are sites that are also kind of loaded with history. So site specificity in some sense and a response to the site become very interesting kind of prompts, provocations for the artists. And we have Catherine with us here today, who visited one of our editions in 2014, sorry, the second one. And in that sense, it was also one of the editions where a much smaller edition in that sense, but more site-specific in that sense. And it would be interesting if you could recollect a few things from us from that moment.
So it was the second one, so closer to the beginnings than where we are now, and even much before Ali's experience. And I have to say that this the site is absolutely. And it's got this point of the site, you know, because in this case it's. Ça marche maintenant? Vous m'entendez maintenant? C'est mieux? Bon.
Hello, hello.
Is it okay now? Or
Hello?
sinon, je vais parler fort.
This one is working.
Hello? No, it's not.
Testing.
It works now?
Bit louder. Speak louder.
Ok, ça va comme ça, c'est mieux? Bon. Alors, je vais le tenir comme ça parce que j'ai pas l'habitude. Donc, back to English and back to the in situ situation. I think the place is.
Yeah, we're trying.
Alors, comment je fais? Peut-être aller sans micro. Est-ce que vous m'entendrez si je parle comme ça? Oui. Voilà. Bon, alors je vais essayer de tenir parce que j'ai pas un gros coffre, mais bon, on va essayer. So, back to the in situ, the site of the Biennale is so magic in a way that really you have to be not very talented, you know, and be able to answer. What I found extremely interesting with the Biennale is that, contrary to many biennales or exhibitions and in situ projects I visited, and I visited quite a lot in my life, I remember very well certain spots of this Biennale, beginning with, I could mention, of course, because as one of the major works in this edition, which is part of the Pompidou collection, the museum collection in Pompidou, which was the amazing installation by Belita Garcia in the Spice Pepper House. I could mention in a very different way. And first of all, I should say, because it has more to do maybe not with theory, but more with the concept and how you work out the Biennale. What I found extremely interesting, and I hope it's something which will be kept, that it's a rooted Biennale. You know where you are. So by rooted, I don't mean folkloristic, I don't mean illustrative, no. I mean being in a place which is not trying to look different from what it is, in a place which is trying to function in Biennale time, as it is functioning with the people on normal time in the year. It's something you feel in the way people are circulating, they feel low, they enter the crowd, they don't feel like oppressed by the cultural discourse. And I think what is really was satisfying, because I didn't go after for a certain number of reasons, and beginning a lot of already in these past years. What was really, really interesting and part of the Biennale mission from my point of view, especially in India, is to make really that you could feel, that you could see, that you could understand that contemporary art in India is part of the long history. So it's not emerging, and if I'm referring to this terrible discourse of the 80s, emerging artists, as if artists were emerging, especially in some countries like India, China, where there are thousands of years of civilization, but artists would emerge, and emerge when you emerge from nothing, you emerge from the black hole, you emerge from no history. So on many, many levels, the way it was installed, the invitation to a certain number of artists, the beginning with, I took my notes because I'm quite tired, and it's a heavy week, so I don't want to lose my memory. So the showing of the archive by Kunalo Rajan, who was also showing the many, many complexities of cultural complexities of India, the way it could picture writers, activists, people with historical papers. So it was really like giving a kind of perspective, a form to the Biennale, background to the Biennale. And of course, with more recently echoing like what Sim built the first time, or close to the first time she was installing images, documentary images into this kind of furniture and structures. And it was a very interesting display, and a very strong echoing to two different documentary practices, two different moments in the place that she's now working in Delhi. And so these kind of things which are very, very powerful. And of course, you have the amazing sculpture studio by Sai Rahal, which was really, and many, many other places, and moving, you would really be able to connect these contemporary works, these contemporary installations with the past. And of course, you have in the middle, and this I found extremely interesting, because normally people will try to show iconic works as a major part of modern art and so on. And we had Alansi, his key work, which is CZG 69, the luminary in Indian art, in experimental Indian art. And instead of trying to show in this context a very high-tech, complicated installation and so on, they decided for showing the collection and in a kind of projection of the flights of the, I don't remember the exact number, but the many, many joints which were used for this animated movie in 69 by Alansi. So this was in a very quiet, not too far from a very interesting painted pen by Clemente. Nothing about Francesco Clemente doing this kind of work. It was very, very powerful. And after, and unfortunately we have no images here, and I didn't know because it's not there, there's a few images that we kept. This amazing kind of collection of epiphanies that, you know, when you are really into the buildings and you go around and you don't try to rush and you don't create these people. You have, at a certain moment, into the city, you know, because you were in Russia for a longer time, this amazing antique shop, which looks like another Biennale. It's all the structure, it's like a carrera, it's one room after the other. And by the way, we have a very interesting tradition, all the march and porcelain on the walls. And you know, all these together, for me, this was really the I think that with many, I mean, maybe Shwetal won't agree, but from my point of view, even the slight dysfunctionings, all the dysfunctionings, and everywhere is documented by MoMA, everywhere. And even with the slight dysfunctioning due to climate, it was not at all the issue. It was never disturbing from a strong relationship to the work and the concentration on the experiment. So I think for all reasons, I think that the question is really competing.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I wanted to respond to something you said, Shubigi, earlier, and also Ali talking about mud and water. And for those that don't know, Kochi-Muziris, Kochi-Muziris, which Mario alluded to, Muziris was a port on the southern tip of India. It's about 35 kilometers from where Kochi is. In the 1320s, there was some sort of cataclysmic event. Scientists don't really know, but some kind of tsunami, earthquake, we don't know. And Muziris gets covered in mud, and it disappears. And later on, in the 17th and 18th century, amateur scientists and geologists and archaeologists keep seeing this name Muziris on maps, on old Roman maps, Phoenician maps, and so on. And they start looking for the location of Muziris. And each meter of excavation in the site that is now considered probably where Muziris is, it's a little contentious because it was a long time ago, there's not many records, but each meter of excavation is 100 years of history. And they're down 20 meters or maybe more now, and they're discovering things from Rome, from Africa, from the Levant, from Asia and so forth, and things that were used for trade, and it's informing another narrative of history, which I think that we have really embraced this idea of a pre-Enlightenment idea of cosmopolitanism that existed here, the first synagogue, the first church, the first mosque outside the Holy Lands, coexisting fairly peacefully. The only place in 2,000 years that the Jews were never expelled from. So I think that we use this as a kind of a beginning to have a conversation with artists and thinkers around what that means. And of course, as Shubigi alluded at the beginning, we're really far away from that cosmopolitanism today, even in India, sadly. And so I think that was something that we really want to foreground, and I think it becomes therefore a really fertile site for artists and thinkers and practitioners to come in and work, in most of our cases, site-specifically. And I think the sort of jadedness around the proliferation of biennials around the world is also around a kind of homogenization, that they tend to feel and look the same. Or there's a kind of curatorial class that sort of, jumps from biennial to biennial. I think what maybe the reason why Kochi has sort of sparked imaginations, I think, in its very still early stages, we're still, working on our 5th edition, is that I think that the artists that we've had curate since the 1st edition and now Shubigi really approached the site in a very site-specific manner. They didn't come with a kind of toolkit of ideas to then sort of supplant. They really think very organically from a bottom-up around the local history, the contemporary history, the site, the buildings that we have, and also the many, many constraints and challenges we have, working in a place where there isn't arts infrastructure, where there isn't museum spaces. And so we've had to create all of those things over the years, and I think that it's shaped the character and nature of the project, and I think it's also shaped the artistic response to the site. So I wanted to say those few things.
And I think it's also known as the People's Biennale for many reasons. I mean, at the end of the day, what we were trying to do when Kochi was started was to, in a way, create an encounter for audiences in South Asia with contemporary art, in the flesh, in the making. Kochi is also a biennale where you don't have VIP previews. It opens on the 12th of December to everybody, and that was really, really important for us to truly make sure that the city, the island, has a kind of an ownership to it. And most of our audiences at the end of the day come from South Asia, so what does it mean for them to encounter this diversity? And Shubigi, in fact, in this edition, she's with 70% new commissions. She had the she had the great joy and timing of having traveled 40 cities just before the pandemic hit. So I think it's been quite an incredible journey to be a part of, because I think for Shubigi, she went out there and she picked practices that she truly believed in, voices and methodologies that she truly believed in, and the curatorial framework kind of came to her as she met people and as ideas came through, and in a way it enmeshed with her own practice. Shubigi was an artist with in the 2018 edition of the Kochi-Muziris Biennale, where she again goes back to the idea of creating new mythologies and telling new stories, and it somehow continues to be a kind of a recurring strategy for the Kochi Biennale Foundation and for the Kochi-Muziris Biennale, is to be able to and this is why we thought of this kind of a framing for the talk today, was to think of how stories can be used to diffuse majoritarian narratives, to kind of challenge them, and to in a way how can arts and cultural workers like preface the making of new histories, the fabrication of new histories, of new fictions, to be able to challenge that which sits as state-prescribed majoritarian knowledge. Shubigi, maybe you could speak a little bit of this journey that you embarked on, and I mean, you were in Kochi yourself since 2018, and then taking on this role as the curator, and just being able to travel. You're also possibly the first curator who's been able to weave that long history of affinity between South America, Africa, and South and Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Thank you. I think you're being very generous when you say that, Mario, but thank you. I think that one of the joys about curating this biennial in Kochi is that the site actually does a lot of the work for you. There's so much that's already there embedded. It's not just the histories, of course, that we've spoken about at length, but also the fact that it's in a Marxist state that is also the Center for Catholicism, as one example of all the paradoxes that exist quite harmoniously with each other. And you can't ever come out with an easy reading when it comes to Kochi or to the sites or to any of the editions or previous editions of the Biennale. And I really love that. I like that ability to defy genre and generalization. You can't just sort of write this off as a certain type of Biennale, because it really isn't. It's very mutable. And that's something that I admire and I've always believed is necessary. That is one of the ways to push back against a stagnation of idea, a stagnation also of narrative, because ultimately majoritarian and authoritarian narrative, which Ali also spoke really beautifully and powerfully about in his works, and also today, this only works if you can have a singular narrative that can be enforced as a dominant narrative, and it is unquestionable, right? Now, for a narrative to remain unquestioned, ultimately you cannot have pluralism, you cannot have diversity, you cannot have chaos, you cannot have mess, you cannot have muddiness of genre, you cannot have any of that fluidity. So what Kochi has is all of the latter and none of the former. It doesn't have any of that sort of singular dominant narrative. So if you ask me to actually define what this entire enterprise is, it's impossible, really. I think the closest I've come to thinking of it is a kind of shaggy dog. It has this incredible charm. You don't know why, but it really does. And it's not just because of its ability to be really mutable, as I said, but also because, like a really good shaggy dog, it's got its own how do I say? It has a complete lack of ownership. You can't really say that this is, say, the Biennale Foundation's Biennale. It's also very much a people's Biennale. And that's not just a phrase that is bandied about very lightly or casually. There's a sense of ownership over this Biennale that extends beyond an institutional frameworking and therefore beyond curatorial frameworking. And one of the delights of doing this is knowing that, yes, I may have my curatorial framework, but this is all being released into the wild, so to speak. I don't have that power to say, okay, this is a definable aspect of this edition of the Biennale. And I really love that porosity. This is, again, something that is also informed naturally, of course, by my practice and the way I think, but also by that travel that Mario mentioned. It's also because I think this collapsing of the bulk of the world's population under one phrase, Global South, is something we really need to dismantle. So when I actually was writing my curatorial framework to work out all these ideas, I actually wrote a 3,000-word essay. Why not? While I was traveling on my phone. And one of the things that I actually questioned in that essay is the problems of region and the problems of thinking of localness and region. And I've also noticed this. A lot of the places I went to in certain parts of the world, and you can guess which, I was always told, oh, the Kochi-Muziris Biennale, that's a regional biennale, isn't it? And you can tell that that's a kind of way to, it's almost like saying that anything outside of the global north will always be regional. But what does region really mean? I mean, just you have to just look at the history of Kochi and Muziris to know that, and Muziris traded as far back as with Babylon and Mesopotamia. That's how ancient it is. What is region? We're talking about crossing oceans here. We're talking about interaction between continents. There are artists being that I'm showing in like Vivant Sundaram, for instance, in this edition. I'm showing work of his that he made decades ago in collaboration with artists in South America. And there's where does this all there's a legacy here that exists and predates our notions of what is the so-called first world and what are the so-called third or developing worlds, which are all really ugly terms, by the way. So the Spinale has this really beautiful ability to just have no clear antecedents while saying, yes, we have this history, but this is not a singular history. It's not a dominant narrative, and it doesn't fit easily with any state narratives at all. I think that it's hard again to try and paint this picture here, but I hope that you get a sense, for those of you who haven't been there yet, to get a sense of actually how extraordinary this Biennale really is. I think that this sense, all of this also comes with problems. It comes with challenges. But again, a challenge means you just have to think of a way to work differently. So you can't rely on your usual methods. You can't rely on your usual museological way of looking and thinking. You can't rely on conventional exhibition display. We're talking about sites where climate control is the ultimate challenge. These are warehouses. They were not meant to house a lot of sort of, work that really, but at the same time, these are challenges that we really embrace. I think the venues are particularly redolent of all this history, including very recent colonial history. And at the same time, they're also free of those. Every time we have artists come in, those histories get challenged. Those dominant narratives get challenged. The weight of this whole burden of history also shifts, and it shifts towards, or rather shifts in favor of people who disrupt these lines all the time, people who are on the margins, people whose voices don't get heard very often. So it's been actually an incredible experience to be at the helm of something like this, where to listen to the artists, to sort of learn more about their methods and their practices, that's actually informed the core and the ethos of this edition. I have to also say we had to postpone twice because of the pandemic, and almost all our artists stuck with us the whole time. And it's not what I expected, but it's just an incredibly, how would I say, it's an incredible act of generosity on their part. And I, for one, don't take that lightly. So I'm immensely grateful to every single artist that has labored through very precarious conditions during the pandemic. Kerala was also, like most of the world, quite badly affected by the pandemic. So the fact that we're opening is, I think, a boost for a lot of people. And I'm so glad that it's coming to fruition now. So again, I just wanted to say that I hope to see you all there in December, for quite an extraordinary experience. Sorry, before I forget, Ali, I loved what you said about authoritarian regimes. The first thing they do is to create this poverty of the imagination. They destroy our abilities. They work quite deliberately to destroy our ability to imagine alternatives. Absolutely love that you said that, because that's so spot on. And I think that's, again, the core of, like I said, we have to act as if the ideal exists, that it's possible for us to have these ideals and these imaginaries. And I think your work is one of the most powerful works also I saw at Venice this time. And I'm so happy that we're getting the opportunity to show it. And thank you again for sticking with us so long.
I just want to mention something. So it's important to say this, that I think one of the birthplaces of the project is Kochi, because it's like we were discussing the work that was in process, even if today it's in Venice. So I'm very happy that finally going to where it should have been. And it was very interesting for me because, I mean, I'm always trying to go away from my point zero, which is Beirut, to as far as Sudan, to think about, questions related to this point zero, but also to the world, but also how this project also was echoed in Kochi through the history of Kochi, and how this sort of brought new maturity and ideas to the project. So I think this kind of collaboration is very important for artists, and I feel that we went through the pandemic together because there's always these discussions about do we postpone or not, how do artists feel about it. So it was every time asking this question, what do we do now? Do we still postpone? So I'm happy it's finally happening.
I think I just forgot to mention one point, of course, but it's so obvious, but nevertheless, that it's a Biennale happening in the southern part of India, so that when you have so many
Catherine, sorry, I can't hear you if you don't use the mic. Sorry.
Testing. You have to hold it really close.
Okay, so like that. Yeah, I think it's one of the important points is that it's happening in the southern part of India, in making people aware that not only Delhi, Mumbai, or even Bengal, which are a very, very strong part, of course, in the modern history, is existing and working. So I think it's very, very meaningful to have this long cultural history, and eventually also trying to show the complexity between visual arts and literature and text in the southern part of India. And one of my friends was telling me a few months ago, it was kind of joke, but not fully. There is a language we never mention in India, the third language of India. The third, when you think about when you think about English and Indian language, I think the third one is Portuguese, which is also a Lusophone country. So for all these reasons, I think that you can also deal with the paradoxes, the fake minorities. Minorities effects sometimes are very constructed, and when you dig a little bit, it's not as minoritarian as people would say. And also with this kind of metaphor of the growing and growing, the more you go deep, the more you learn about the mixing and exchanges in this specific part of India and of the world. I think it's, of course, very inspiring when you are able to read the map from now.
I think we are almost running out of time. If anybody has any questions for Shubigi, for any of the panelists, please raise your hand. If not, then I think within the next 5-6 minutes, we'll wrap up. It's a very busy week, and we really thank you for all of your attention and for coming here today when there's so much going on. I hope this has been informative, and of course, if you have any questions, we'll be around a little bit later. We want to again thank Aisha now and Alexandra for this invitation. Right on cue, thank you. And a big congratulations for championing art from around the world in Paris. We don't manage to do that in London, but Paris has the edge here in terms of a fair that is looking outside of Western Europe and America and bringing us and bringing all of you together. So should I wrap up maybe? I'd just like to thank Shubigi, who's up very, very late in Singapore right now. Please go to bed. I'd like to thank Ali, Cherri. I'd like to thank Catherine David, Mario de Souza, who's flown in, and also apologies from Bose Krishnamachari, who is on site in Kerala. We welcome you all to Kochi on the 12th of December. We look forward to hosting you in the spirit of generations of people from that region who have hosted different cultures. And if there's any questions, please let us know. And thank you again very much.
Thank you.